first language acquisition. In the previous video, we spoke about the syntactic development during the one word and two word stages. We said that one word utterances like spoon and daddy can mean a whole sentence. Two word utterances also like want cookie, like baby want cookie, or maybe do you want cookie, or where is daddy, etc. In the telegraphic speech, the child produces different words which lose the function words. They do not contain function words in order to refer to a whole sentence. So let's go back to the first word, one word utterances. We call them holophrases. They are one word utterances used by the child to express the meaning of a sentence. For example, in our dialect, the babies use bua to name water or to ask for it or to express their thirst. The utterance here is used for different functions, which are naming it, asking for it, or expressing the need for it. The child utterances structure starts to emerge at the two-word stage. These two-word utterances are not randomly put together, and the word order is developed within time or within the stages. So we have here some examples about the semantic relations that are conveyed through word order. Like, for example, baby sleep, we have baby, which is the agent, and sleep, which is the action. We have kick ball, kick is the action, and ball is the object. Here, the child may mean the order, kick the ball, or I will kick the ball, or I want to kick the ball. Sit chair, sit is the action and chair is the location. So you see the order here, action first, then location. Action, then object. Agent, then action. Like here, entity, location, entity bed. Subject, then object in mommy book. We have entity and the attribute, car, red. Okay, we have this shoe, demonstrative, and then the entity. The baby do not say shoe this. Okay, we have also here the example which we are going to specify, daddy hat, the possessor and the possession. The child knows the semantic difference between daddy hat when it means daddy's hat and when it means daddy's wearing his hat or daddy's sitting on the hat. When he says daddy hat, he knows the meaning, but he can't express the meaning, okay? When he says daddy hat, when he means daddy's hat, we have here daddy is the possessor and hat is the possession. But it changes its function when it means daddy's wearing his hat. So here we have daddy is the subject and the hat is the object. Daddy's wearing his hat. And we have daddy's sitting on the hat, the subject and the locative. Okay? So now we move to the semantic development. The fact that the acquisition of meaning is a never-ending process makes it more complicated than the acquisition of phonology and syntax. In fact, children start producing the first words around 1 year old, and by the process of trial and error, they learn to link words to their proper meanings. For instance, when they give the label bua to a piece of the bread, adults correct it, or they do not understand the meaning, so they do not give him the piece of bread. So he understands or she understands that they have to change the utterance. Okay? Now, sometimes there is a semantic overgeneralization or overextension by the child during the the holophrasic stage. The limited vocabulary that the children possess make them use the same word to refer to a large number of unrelated objects. For example, every round object is going to be called ball, even a watermelon. Okay? And every animal that walks on four is going to be called doggy. Or during the Eid al-Adha feast, he's going to see the sheep for the first time, second time, etc. So he's going to name all the animals as a sheep. The child also overextends the meaning of a word on the basis of its shape, sound, and size, and to some extent on the basis of its movements and texture. We move now to our last point in this lesson, which is the critical period. But before we go to the critical period and explain what it is, we have first to explain the function of the brain. You know that the brain is divided into two hemispheres. We have the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. The right hemisphere controls some functions in the body, and the left hemisphere controls some others. So this process of controlling is called the lateralization. Now, the lateralization is the tendency for cognitive processes to be specialized to one side of the brain or the other. Language acquisition happens in the left hemisphere. So here it happens, language acquisition. And the perception of visual and spatial relationships occur in the primarily in the right hemisphere. Let's say this is the right hemisphere. Okay. Now we can say that language is lateralized in the left hemisphere of the brain. What proves this is the disease of aphasia, which occurs when the brain's left hemisphere is damaged due to an accident or something else, and the person here loses the ability to speak, to process language, or perceive it. Now, scientists took this example as a support to the theory that language is one of the cognitive factors controlled by the left hemisphere. Now, we know that language acquisition takes place at the same period of the development of the brain. The brain lateralization. The brain lateralization is a process that takes place during the development of the brain. When the lateralization is complete, i.e. after the brain develops fully, it is impossible here to acquire the language appropriately. Now, we're not talking about the children learning other languages, because here they have the concept of language. They have learned the concept of language before being introduced to second, third, and fourth, or even more languages. In fact, some scholars disagree on the point that the critical period has an end, like Lenberg, and who claims that it is even a period that can be found during the puberty. He gave the example of the mentally retarded who can frequently make slow and modest beginnings in the acquisition of language until the early teens. So sometimes we find opponents, and here we have the Creation, for instance, who suggested a much earlier stage, around the age of 5. Another important point about the critical period hypothesis, which is said to be biologically determined period of life, when the human being is able to acquire language beyond which the acquisition becomes more difficult, sometimes even impossible. So it is neurologically controlled. We know here that this period is neurologically controlled. However, some suggest that it is connected with the cognitive development and maturation of the child, whereas others suggest different factors that make it easier for the child to learn the language at an early age. For instance, what are those factors? Factors which make it easier for the child is when the adults try to repeat words and to give them positive feedback. So here the factor of imitation and reward. This is clearly illustrated in the tragic case of Jenny, who is the American girl that was found at the age of 13, locked down in the backyard of her house. Until that age, she had been exposed to no linguistic stimulation. No one talked to her. Uh, After so many years of careful tuition by scientists and linguists, her linguistic ability remained abnormal, but her acquisition of mother tongue has taken place after this critical period. So here we understand the importance of the critical period in the acquisition of the mother tongue. Beyond the critical period, it becomes very difficult, even impossible for the human being to learn the mother tongue. Remember, we're not talking about any other language, but we're talking about the first language. So here we come to the end of our lesson. Thank you very much for your attention. Please do contact me on my email or on Google Classroom or Moodle for more clarification or for your questions.